Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well. It's me again, Tivia, and we're here for another Bible study stream. And I'd just like to welcome you. I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope your day is still going well. I was actually meant to be on a little while ago, but sometimes these things can take a little bit. I was having some problems with the internet, etc. But we're going to go through Genesis chapters. Well, let me just start off properly. Today is Monday, the 16th of March, 2026. So I hope you just had a good start to the week. And again, I'd just like to welcome you to this live stream. And we're going to go through Genesis chapters 38 to 40 and have a little recap of my last stream. There's just a few things that I kind of missed out on, and I'd just like to go over them because they are important. And even though I said I was going to include them in the description, I kind of thought it just best that we just have like a little talk through, or I just, so I think it's better that way. Sometimes when you're doing things live, you might just miss one or two things, or things don't come instantly to you as you expect them to. So, I just thought it just best we kind of peek through. One of them was, which is quite important actually, is the 10 Commandments. So I'm just going to go through them now because I only remember 3 when I was speaking to you last time. And that's just not cool. So I think it's best that we just go through them now and just so that we know what the 10 are, because every live stream, almost every live stream, in a call to action, I do say that in order to obtain wisdom, you have to obey the Lord's commandments. You have to follow them. You have to obey them. It's like without question. So I did go through the 10 Commandments in my last stream. I went through all of them. So I'm just going to go through them again so that we are all aware of what we need to do. And as I said last time, as you'll be able to tell from what I'm saying, they're quite straightforward. And before I start, I'd just like to say welcome to the stream. And also, this is specifically for my new follower, Ryan Sicko. Thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate it. And I hope you, if you're not live now, I hope you are listening to the stream at some point. So then again, thank you, Ryan. So let's just go through the 10 Commandments. Okay, because wisdom is only obtained by following the commandments. And once you obtain wisdom, you'll have knowledge to know the difference between good and evil. Okay? Wisdom can't be bought. It can't be taught. You don't, it's not something you gain from experience. You gain wisdom by following the Lord's commandments, all 10 of them. You can't pick and choose. You follow all of them, okay? So let's just have a flick through and let's just take it from there. The commandments appear twice in the Old Testament. The first time they appear is in Exodus, and they appear again in Deuteronomy. We're going to go through Exodus chapter 20. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I the Lord your God am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will hold you will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day, is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and the earth, the sea, and all of them and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. I don't know what's happening to my words coming out of my mouth today. So I do apologize for what's been going on for the last few minutes. And let's just roll through this, yeah? Verse 12. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. So those are the 10 commandments. Like I said earlier, they're quite straightforward. They're easy to follow. So we cannot pick and choose. We have to follow all of them. So just put this into your daily life, the things that you need to be following. And that would be the first step towards that door opening for you, for the Lord coming into your life, and for you being blessed, better still, baptized in the Holy Spirit. Okay? There was a few other things that I like to recap on because I did miss them. When I was reading Genesis, I was going through, I'm just going to bring this up on the screen. I was going through when, just before Joseph was sold to the Ishmaelites and the Midianites, and he proceeded from there. But I kind of didn't understand. Well, I did understand it, but I just did not go through this well, and I hesitated. So let me just go through verses. This is Genesis 37, verse 22. But let me just start from verse 21. Then you know what I'm referring to. Verse 21. But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, Let us not take his life. And Reuben said to them, Shed no blood, throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand and restore him to his father. this was a place that I sort of, that I wasn't really getting right. And it's here, that he may rescue him. What that meant was, Reuben wanted to delay the issue, right? So he was going to throw Joseph into the pit. And I assume once his brothers' backs were turned, or when they had enough time, or he would have come back for him at some point, taking him out of the pit and taking him back home. So that's what was going on there. I just missed that point. I didn't understand it at the time. But when I was reviewing the video, I thought, no. This is an important point. It's something that needs to be stressed, that yes, although the brothers did conspire to initially kill Joseph, then they sort of like said, all right, and Judah came in and said, look, let's not kill him. Let's just leave him there, okay? And then Reuben was saying to himself, all right, let's dump him in this pit, but I'll come back for him later and take him back to Israel, their father. But that never materialized, because while he was in the pit, people walking past, they saw him and they took him and eventually sold him. Another point that I missed was, first of all, he was found by the Ishmaelites, right? And yes, the Ishmaelites and the Israelites are cousins, but Ishmael, who the Ishmaelites derived from, is a grand uncle of Joseph. Okay, that was a point that I missed. So Ishmael, the father or the progenitor of the Ishmaelites, was a grand uncle of Joseph. And the chaps that, because the Ishmaelites sold him to the Midianites, right? And Midian was a son of Abraham via Keturah. Okay? So he was Joseph's grand uncle as well. Okay, so they're all related there, but I assume everybody went their separate ways. So that was the points that I was missing. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I think it's very important that I did that. And also we spoke about genealogies and how people present day in our time like to claim we're Edomites, or they're Edomites, we're from Israel, we're descended from Jacob, we're the Israelites, we're the Hebrews. That's cool, you know, but I wanted to stress that the Bible says in 2 places that we should not concern ourselves about this. And the last stream, I wasn't able to tell you or refer to you the book and the verses. I did say I was going to put it in the description, but I think it's always nice to read it out. So I'm going to do that now. So bear with me while I just pick these things up. The first one is 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 4. So let's just go to 1 Timothy. Okay. So let's just start from verse 3. As I urged you when I was going to Macedonia, remain at Ephesus, so that you may charge certain persons not to teach any different doctrine, nor to devote themselves to myths and endless genealogies which promote speculations rather than the stewardship from God that is by faith. You see, so that's really important, because I have noticed a lot of people, literally every creed, every Christian, no matter what their background is, not all of them, but people amongst those various groups, like to dig into genealogies and start saying who's this and who's that. And we're clearly told that, we shouldn't do that. That you're promoting speculations rather than stewardship from God that is by faith. What we just want to be blessed. We want to obey the Lord's commandments. We want to gain wisdom. Know the difference between good and evil. Very important. Because we're surrounded by evil. We're surrounded by negativity. So it's important that we know the difference between good and evil. And the only way that we can know that is by obtaining wisdom. And that will give us the knowledge of good and evil. Okay? So, and when people start thinking about who are my genealogies, where do I come from? Am I an Israelite? Am I from the lost tribes? Am I an Edomite? Or when you start classifying people like that, the Bible is telling us straightforwardly, don't do it. And it also mentions it in Titus chapter 3, verses 8 to 9. And let's just go through that as well, because when things are mentioned twice, in different books by different, let me just call them apostles, right? It's something that we need to take heed of. It's very important because we can get lost in these things. So Titus 3, verse 8 to 9, right? Let me just bring that up on the screen for you. Verse 8, right here. The saying is trustworthy, and I want you to insist on these things, so that those who have believed in God may be careful to devote themselves to good works. These things are excellent and profitable for people. But avoid foolish controversies, genealogies, dissensions, and quarrels about the law, for they are unprofitable and worthless. So this even gives it more emphasis, because we're being told, look, avoid these things. Avoid foolish controversies, genealogies, dissensions, and quarrels about the law, for they are unprofitable and worthless. Let's not waste time doing these things, because you get people arguing, what version of the Bible do you read? I only read the King James Version because of this and this and this. Then they say, well, the Holy Mother Mary and this and that and that and this. They just bring out, then you've got these theologians coming out with stuff and other people saying different things. Let's not get, how can I say it? The path to the Lord is simple. It's not complicated. Nobody has to hold your hand. Nobody has to direct you. You don't need a pastor. You don't need a reverend father. You don't need an overseer. It's a personal thing between you and the Lord. Don't get distracted by all these general discussions. That's what we're being told. Do not get distracted. You want to establish a personal relationship with God. The Lord made you in His image, okay? Not in anybody else's image, in His image. So don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Approach the Lord personally and give your life to Him. And let's avoid all these arguments that we're being told to avoid in the Bible, because there are powers out there, there are people out there, there are forces out there that are more than happy to deceive us, to waste time, to waste your time, to deceive you, to take your money, and to tell you you've got to do this, that and this. No, you don't. I've just told you what you need to do. Obey the Lord's commandments, knock on the door, and ask the Lord for you to come into his kingdom and be blessed, be baptized in the Holy Spirit. Okay? So I just wanted to ensure that I emphasize that. And I've emphasized this previously because it's very important. There's one thing reading the Bible. There's one thing saying, praise the Lord. There's one thing, there's just one thing being a Christian or being religious. And there's another thing by letting the Lord come into your life and you being protected by the Lord and you following his commandments, his laws and his statutes. Okay, so I wish you the best on that journey. And these are the things that we want to focus on. And as I said, by reading the book of Genesis and the other books as well, it informs our knowledge. It tells us how this world was created. It tells us how man fell. And it shows us all the historical aspects that happened. Okay? But we always have to come back to the fact that we need to become part of the Lord's kingdom, because this world, the small god here is Satan. He's the prince of the air, and we know what we do with air, we breathe it in. Okay, so we want to get out of the darkness that we see every day, establish a personal relationship with the Lord and obey his word. Okay, if that's been on your mind, make that move. All right, so we're just going to pop through Genesis now. And I did say up until the end of this month, my objective, just a personal objective, is to, or personal goal rather, is to live stream every day, every weekday till the end of the month. So I've been doing that since last Thursday, and it was a bit of an effort today, but I'm here and I'm really happy that I am, because right now I just feel that the 1.5 hours that I spent trying to get this stream ready have been well spent. So let's, why don't we just go through Genesis, chapters 38 to 40, and I think we're going to find them quite interesting, because we're kind of moving on now to Joseph in Egypt and the tribulations of Judah, one of Joseph's older brothers. So let's roll into this. Oh, I think I can get more space by closing this. Yeah. Genesis chapters 38. It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned aside to a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hera. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. He took her and went into her, and she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. Oh, that's interesting. So he named the first child and she named the second child. Yet again she bore a son, and she called his name Shelah. Judah was in Chizib when she bore him. And Judah took a wife from his firstborn, Sorry. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife, and perform the duty of your brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother." But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, so whenever he went into his brother's wife, he would waste the semen on the ground, so as not to give offspring to his brother. And what he did was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. Then Judah said to Tamar his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow in your father's house, till Shelah my son grows up." For he feared that he would die like his brothers. So Tamar went and remained in her father's house. In the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. When Judah was comforted, he went up to Timnah, to his sheep shearers, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. And when Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep," she took off her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, wrapping herself up, and sat at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown up, and she had not been given to him in marriage. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He turned to her at the roadside and said, "Come, let me come in to you." For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me that you may come in to me?" He answered, "I will send you a young goat from the flock." And she said, "If you give me a pledge until you send it." He said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She replied, "Your signet and your cord and your staff that is in your hand." So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood. When Judah sent the young goat by his friend, the Adullamite, to take back the pledge from the woman's hand, he did not find her. And he asked the men of the place, "Where is the cult prostitute who was at Enam on the roadside?" And they said, "No cult prostitute has been here." So he returned to Judah and said, "I have not found her." Also the men of the place said, "No cult prostitute has been here." And Judah replied, "Let her keep the things as her own, or we shall be laughed at. You see, I sent this young goat, and you did not find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been immoral. Moreover, she is pregnant by immorality." And Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned." And she was brought out. She sent word to her father-in-law, "By the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant." And she said, "Please identify whose these are, the signet and the cord and the staff." Then Judah identified them and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah, and he did not know her again." When the time of her labor came, there were twins in her womb. And when she was in labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." But as he drew back his hand, behold, his brother came out, and she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself. Therefore, his name was called Perez. Afterward, his brother came out with the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Well, there might be quite a bit to unpack there, but I think, what happened, he didn't want his third son to die by the same woman, Shelah. So he refused to marry his son to Tamar when his son had grown up to be a man. And Shelah, I assume, being lonely, she wanted a man or a husband, and she knew what her father-in-law was doing, deceiving her and preventing her from moving on with her life. So she pulled that stunt, that trick on him. And as you can see, Judah got caught out. And he actually wanted to, what did he want to do? I think the punishment for immorality then was death. And so he got caught out doing that. So I suppose I can laugh about that now, but that's what happened there. So it's difficult for me to think what the learning point is there, but I'm assuming he should have just followed up in what he said and given his son Tamar to her, which is tradition. So that's the learning point there, was to do what you said you would do, or explain to her why you don't want to do it, rather than just keep quiet and go about your business. So an interesting thing. I suppose no one comes out from that innocently, but it seems in some way things did resolve themselves. So I've always found that part of Genesis kind of interesting. Why don't we now go to verse, or chapter rather, 39. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt by Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. The captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelite, or I got that the wrong way around, who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house, and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he had made him overseer in his house, and all over that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. Wow, that's he really trusted Joseph, but I'm assuming, it's not an assumption, but he knew that Joseph was blessed by his God, and those blessings had come to him. So why not be confident and leave everything to him to run it? And he only had concern about anything but the food he ate. I wonder what that means. Why would he be concerned about food he ate? I suppose you get fussy, don't you? And you want certain meals prepared for you. I think that's what that means. Nothing about being poisoned or anything. That just means that he was literally just chilling. He only was concerned about the food that he ate, and he let Joseph take over everything. Okay, so yeah, that's what I took from there. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and after a time his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And she spoke to Joseph day after day. He would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men in the house was there, in the house, she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. And as soon as he saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled out of the house, she called to the men of her household and said to them, "See, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. Then she laid up his garment by her until his master came home. And she told him the same story, saying, 'The Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us came in to me to laugh at me. But as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled out of the house.' As soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, 'This is the way your servant treated me,' his anger was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him in the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. And he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. Well, that's interesting though, isn't it? Because as a man, you might be faced with these types of situations where a woman wants you to sleep with her, and because of the circumstances, you don't want to. Your brother's wife, your friend's wife, your boss's wife, your neighbor's wife. Could even be somebody closer to you than that. Okay? And what does the Lord tell us in one of the commandments? Don't covet your neighbor's wife, his servant. And don't commit adultery. So it's always good to turn down these offers, because as you can see, what if he did sleep with her? Do you think she would have kept her mouth shut? And he didn't sleep with her, and she accused him of sleeping with her. So you can't win. You know, you think, oh, you can do something in secret. You can't do anything in secret. If something is known by more than one person, it's not a secret, is it? And especially when you're doing that kind of act, it's not, why bother? It's something worth avoiding. Okay? Don't let the temptation or the lust get the better of you. Yeah, just stand down and refuse it. And for example, if your friend's wife is pressuring you to sleep with her, what do? Well, you unfriend him, don't you? It's quite simple. You know, just unfriend that person and get out of there. So, yeah, that's just what I felt needed to be stressed there. Wow, we're on 40 already? Unbelievable. Sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against the Lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them. They continued for some time in custody. And one night they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, each his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So they asked Pharaoh's officers who were with them in custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces downcast today?" They said to him, We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph, and said to him, "In my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." Then Joseph said to him, "This is its interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, so get me out of this house. For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the pit." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there were all sorts of baked goods for Pharaoh. But the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head." And Joseph answered and said, "This is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand, but he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Okay, so I did say I was going to read up to chapter 40, and we've reached chapter 40. quite a lot going on there. I think it's really interesting. I remember this story from when I was young. I think I said it last time. We used to have this children's Bible, and I used to read it for fun. And the story of Joseph always appealed to me, especially with the way, not at that time, I only realized this as an adult, the way that the Lord loved him and was protecting him and was guiding him. So, yeah, it's an interesting story. I haven't really got that much to say about chapter 40. Joseph had the ability to interpret dreams, and he did. And now as we go forward, we're going to see he's going to interpret Pharaoh's dreams, and also Pharaoh would hold him close to him as well and take Joseph's advice and put him in charge as an overseer. So that's going to be really interesting, especially when we see Joseph's brothers coming to meet him. Before we read that story though, there was I know I've mentioned the Apocrypha more than once, but it kind of goes into a bit more depth with this story. And I just want to say it now because the Bible doesn't mention it. But when Joseph's brothers went to Egypt, initially, they thought to themselves, oh, why don't we see if we can locate Joseph? And the first place that they went to was the brothel, because Joseph was a handsome man. So they assumed that he had been sold to a brothel. So when I initially read that, I thought, oh, they sold Joseph to a brothel. So what? Was he servicing women? But when I thought it through, I thought, well, hang on a minute. Well, I don't know for certain, but I'm assuming that he would have been servicing men. That's my assumption. It didn't state it in Jubilees, I believe it was, but that was my assumption, that he would have been a prostitute for men. So that's what his brothers were feeling, and they knew exactly what part of town to go to. So we can just paint a picture of the ancient world then, that they had brothels for men, and I assume for women. And the first thing that came to Joseph's brothers' mind was that, oh, I think they would have sold him to a brothel, and that's where they went to look for him. And obviously they didn't find him there. But I just found that story kind of interesting, and I just wanted to share that with you. I'll have a look in Jubilees, probably for the next stream. I would have had a look for it now, but I don't know how long it will take me to actually find it, and to share that with you. That would be great. So yes, so yeah, I'd just like to say a great hello to my 2 viewers on Twitch. Thank you for joining me. It's great to have you here. So like I said, I'm going to dig out that story from Twitch, I'm going to dig out that story from the Apocrypha, because I think it kind of throws more light on, as I said previously, on Joseph's brothers and their thinking. And it also brings into view the ancient world then. Not too much different from what we have now, to be totally honest. Because I know when we move forward, are we going to read Kings? Maybe not. But when the Israelites had turned against the Lord, we are told that there were brothels opposite the temple, male brothels opposite the temple. So something to think about. And it's something to think about how people could move from being the Lord's chosen people all the way to worshipping idols and committing all kinds of sins. So yeah. So well, I'd like to thank you for joining me on today's live stream. And I do look forward to doing another stream for the rest of the week, actually, starting from tomorrow, where we're going to go through Genesis, another 3 chapters. And also, I'll source that story about Joseph's brothers, and we can go through that as well. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care now. Good night.